The bases dropped. Soccer Down here is live. July 17th. It's a match day, WallPass Wednesday edition of the show. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out. If you want to join that conversation, hit us up on Twitter at Soccer Down here. Let us know what you're thinking on a Wednesday with 4 matches around Major League Soccer, and one of them being at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Atlanta United hosting the Houston Dynamo. Kickoff is just after 7 o'clock tonight. Jason Longshore, John Nelson here with you this morning. And, John, I want to start with the Copa Argentina match last night, just to throw everybody off. River Plate had to go to penalties to defeat a second division team, Gimnasia de Mendoza, but the story for me wasn't as much the match. I mean, the Copa Argentina is interesting in that they play the games in neutral sites. So it's kind of cool for a country that, has 5 big teams but 2 really big teams. If you're out in San Luis, which is where the stadium was yesterday, you get River Plate come into town, and it's a big deal. And it was a packed house, and it was a very cool atmosphere, not one you normally see. But the stadium was what grabbed my attention around this one, because in Argentina often you see old stadiums that are pretty beat up and are borderline museums. They're kind of the age and the wear and tear is part of the story and part of the charm in a lot of ways. This is one of the newer stadiums in Argentina, and it's a 28,000-seater, which is in that kind of, MLS, you should be looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
And they built it for a price tag that just blew my mind when I saw it, because it's not Columbus Crew. It's not Mopfre Stadium. It's not a glorified high school venue. It's not Mercedes-Benz Stadium either. But they found a price point and a way to do this that is pretty impressive. And it feels like it's something that teams in this country should be looking at, right?
Yeah, and doing a little digging on the contractor, I did find out that the contractor for said stadium is one of 10 preferable contractors that were involved in an alleged kickback / steering of influence scheme in the country.
Well, that part's nothing new. That's like anything that happens.
No.
So I don't know if that even
true.
really applies here, because that's like if you open a McDonald's.
That's true. But no, I think that if obviously for me, when something's put up in 14 months for the price tag that it was
$58 million
for. Yeah, $58 million. So
in just over 12 months.
Yeah, so it was 14 months to get the thing done at $58 million. I'm hoping that it passed inspections and everything was done the proper
it's been
way
open for
to where.
A couple of years now. It's passed all the inspections. All that.
All right.
You don't have to worry about that part. It's the fact that why are stadiums costing $300 million?
$250 million.
Yeah.
In Cincinnati.
And how were they able to get this done for $58 million?
That's my question.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the look of it is probably what grabs you the most. It's got an outer wrap, which is something you're starting to see on a lot of stadiums now. But it's a mosaic, and it gives the stadium a very unique look. And I think the point is, like, you can do a stadium on a budget, and you can do a stadium quickly, and you can do a stadium with character. And that's what's pretty cool about it, is that it doesn't feel like a cookie-cutter venue. It didn't feel like a cookie-cutter venue watching the match. It had space for a stage you can have on one end so you can do concerts and such, and that's something that a lot of venues in the United States are looking at doing. You had one thing that was intriguing, and I never saw a good shot of it from the TV broadcast last night, was that the skyboxes and the press box for commentators aren't part of the stands, and it's just a single tier stand. There's not like an upper deck. It's just all the way around single tier. But they used containers that are attached to the roof. And that's where your press box, your commentators, your skyboxes are.
Like a gondola.
Kind of. I mean, it's not hanging. It's just attached to the roof structure. So, would be a pretty unique view to watch a match. And just looking at camera angles and such, I mean, it looked like a pretty normal kind of camera angle. Pretty normal height for it. It played out really well. Looked good. Fun match to watch as well. And River Plate
get in the plug.
Survived.
To get in the plug for the platform with which you watched said match, that would have been through whom, sir?
Well, they're not giving me anything for it, but Fanatis. Our friends, Fanatis.
Yes.
Who, if they ever want to sponsor us, we are here. Because we talk
for
about
real.
Fanatis all the time. But yeah, I watched on Teise on Fanatis, and it was a fun one. Second division team takes River to penalties. They gave up a goal. Well, they missed a penalty, then River scored, then Ignacia de Mendoza gets a goal to equalize. It goes to penalties because they don't play extra time in Copa Argentina, and River's perfect on their penalties, and Ignacia had one miss, and that was all it took. So, entertaining day, and one reason I was keeping an eye on it was River Plate and all of the rumors around River Plate. If they had went out here in this round of the tournament, round of 32, to a second division team, oh boy, there would have been.
And they're still playing the round of 64.
Okay, you're like confusing everybody because you're like waving things over on one side as we're talking about one thing. Yes, it is a very disorganized tournament. There's still one match in the round of 64 to play, and they've already played multiple round of 32 matches because, welcome to Argentina. It's how things go.
Yes.
The league will get started in actually 10 days, a week and a half. But the thing that's interesting about it from a River Plate perspective is, I wondered if they lost this, would the calls for things like, one, Marcelo Gallardo to be relieved of his duties, which is something that happens. Yeah, he won Copa Libertadores last year. Well, it's pretty quick afterwards, and they don't really have a long memory. Also, would the talk about Pity Martinez continue? Because they're still talking about it, and it's part of the lifeblood of these major teams in Argentina. The flip side is River's eternal rival, Boca Juniors. They have a player that is being linked to Major League Soccer, Christian Pavón, and recent reports are that he wants to make the move to the LA Galaxy, and the club wanted to make more money from the deal, but they're also linked to a couple of fairly big moves. Player coming back from the Middle East, and also Daniele De Rossi from Roma, which won't come cheap. An 8-month deal is what he's being linked to, which, oh, by the way, opens the possibility, because 8 months, you start doing the math, and you're like, that's a weird length of a deal. That would be right when the MLS season would start in 2020. Wonder where he's going to play in MLS.
Yeah.
So Argentina and Major League Soccer, there's a lot of links, and I think there will continue to be because of the way just the business is down there, the way the economy is, the way the opportunities are for players who want to leave, but also good talent at good prices that can fit pretty quickly into MLS for the most part. Not everybody, of course. We're seeing it with Pity Martinez. It's taken him a little bit longer to adjust. We saw Eric Remedi hit the ground running. So every player's not the same, but Argentina as a whole, as a market, is becoming a really important one, I think, for American soccer fans to keep an eye on. And it's a league that, it's a good quality, but it's a league that you don't really have a middle portion from the age range, at least in terms of top quality. You have a lot of great young players. You have a lot of very good older players who go to finish their career in Argentina. the 25 to 29-year-olds that are quality, we'll even go 23 to 29-year-olds probably is more fair, they're not really in Argentina. The ones that are there are ones who didn't want to leave for whatever reason, ones who weren't good enough to leave. So it's a weird market, but it's one that if you're following Major League Soccer, I think you have to keep an eye on what's going on in Argentina and these types of stories because they do affect what'll happen here.
And nothing like getting you're adding layers to what study hall has been started out for when it comes to MLS and who's chasing whom and all this kind of stuff. And I think
that's life. If you follow
and that's what I'm saying.
But if you follow a team in England, you got to know what's going on in Spain, Italy, France, Germany, the Netherlands to really know, okay, what could my team do in the market? I mean, you don't have to go to study hall about them, but you got to know the basics of, okay, the Dutch league, they're going to develop young talent moving on early. All right, the Belgian league, same thing, maybe not quite as high of a level. Other leagues have more money than us, or at least certain teams do. You have to kind of know the basics when you get into these times of year and transfer windows and you start thinking about what your team can do. And I think for MLS, now you're at a point where it's not just random craziness popping up everywhere. There are leagues and things that you need to follow to understand what your teams can do in the upcoming market.
And I think that's the fun part of the continued growth of the league, where it's not just the 30-something from Europe that's coming over here to grab a paycheck. It's the 20-something that's coming up from South America, and it's the mid-20s talent from, say, an Argentina or something like that, in addition to all the players that are being grown domestically. So, no, I just think it's part of the growth of the league. It's part of the fun of the growth of the league is getting to plug in all of the parts of the treasure hunt. For me, it's a fun dynamic that's been added in the last handful of years when it comes to MLS.
What's happening in Argentina, for example, is probably far more relevant to what could happen with your MLS team than what's happening in the Premier League, for example. Not really on the same plane just yet. But you need to know these things. One, a situation like Emile Assad. And now you're getting reports from Stephen Goff at the Washington Post that one thing to keep in mind when it comes to Mr. Emile Assad is that his agent is the same agent as Luciano Acosta. Acosta, talked about it many times. He's in the final 6 months of his contract. He can sign a pre-contract to leave at the end of the season. DC United would get nothing. If DC is able to figure out, okay, Sevilla, for example, which has been linked to Acosta, they want to sign him. They're going to sign him to a pre-contract. You know what, Sevilla? Hey, give us $1 million. Give us 1.5, and you can have him now so you can start the season. Gwen thinks that's a good piece of business. You have to look at something like that when it comes to Emile Assad. Also, you know the situation at Villa Sarsfield. They've let him go on a free. There are clubs in Argentina that he could slot straight into and play. I don't know what the situation was at Vélez, why he didn't get an opportunity. I think he's a player that we know is quality. We've seen it up close here in Atlanta. DC fans have seen it up close. But there's going to be an interesting market for him because he's available on a free. He's got a pretty high-powered agent if it's Acosta's agent. DC has, I believe, talked to try to bring him back. I don't think that's been ruled out. But Stephen Goff also reported that they've been approached by other teams in MLS about getting his MLS rights. And one team that Stephen Goff mentioned by name is Orlando City.
Yeah, then sorry, the interest in raised eyebrow to radio, but hey, you get that kind of firepower if you can bring that in. And I know the Orlando City story that we'll have later on in the show, but you look at that kind of firepower, you need that, and that's plug and play there.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando is in a situation where they can see their first playoff spot. They can see their first playoff journey in their history. It's right there. They need to be aggressive. And if they're able to bring in a Emile Assad out on the flank, yeah, that's going to make Orlando City a team you have to keep an eye on in the East. And that's going to make Atlanta United fans very sad. But that's the situation where DC, for whatever reason, and for me, the no-brainer here is you do whatever you got to do with Luciano Acosta. And it looks like you're not going to be able to re-sign him. So you figure out where he's going to sign a deal, where he can sign a deal, and you make a deal with that club just to get something. Honestly, when it comes to DC United, you just want to get enough to where you can convert it to TAM and then use it. So if you get $750,000, which I think is the max you can convert to TAM, cool, do it. Get it done and get something out of it and make him happy because, well, another one of his agent's clients is Emile Assad, who you have his rights. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is sign him to a deal. So that, to me, feels like the absolute no-brainer here, and I don't know why DC wouldn't do it unless, for whatever reason, Ben Olsen, the front office, they say, you know what, we don't want Emile Assad. We're going to go get something else. Feels foolish to me. I think it's a very simple move for them. Now, part of it is Acosta finding a club to go to and signing a deal. But once that happens, DC needs to move him on, get whatever minimum you can get to do it now, and then sign Emile Assad and bring him in. That would make the most sense for everybody. It'd put Assad into a place where he's comfortable, he knows his teammates. It would seem to be the right move for all. If you're a Atlanta United fan, I don't know if you have a choice in where you would rather see Emile Assad play, but I think you'd probably rather see him play in DC than Orlando.
Yeah, and when it comes to agents, having beneficial relationships with agents who may not have clients in the present but could have clients in the future, you never want to piss off an agent, because there could be somebody down the line that you might need that would be under that person's purview and care, that you don't want to anger them in the front end for something that might happen later.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about agents is most of them represent multiple players that you could be dealing with, or a player you could be dealing with in a few years' time. So you want to cultivate good relationships, and this one just feels like a complete no-brainer for everyone involved, which usually means it doesn't happen because it makes too much sense.
Yeah, too much sense.
Yeah. Paul Tenorio is reporting from The Athletic that it is going to be $100,000 in general allocation money that Atlanta United will send to Chicago to get Mo Adams. Remember, the Fire traded $85,000 in GAM to RSL for the number 10 pick in last year's draft that they used to pick Mo Adams. So Chicago's going to get $15,000 in GAM and a handful of games out of the deal. That's not a great piece of business if you're Chicago.
Nope.
It just feels like a waste. And there's a really good piece over at Fansided about how often over the last couple of years Chicago has given up on young players. And it's kind of staggering. And when you do that, and then you get into the situation that they're in, where Nemanja Nikolic looks to be at the end of his time in Chicago. Bastian Schweinsteiger's at the end of his time playing. Dax McCarty's 32 years old. What do you have? What do you have left? You've picked up Francisco Calvo, good pickup for a defender in this league. You have Nicolas Gaitan, very good number 10 in this league. You have Alexander Katai, who you have for one more year after this. What, you don't really have much, and you haven't developed your young side. Your old side is old and just about done, and you're stuck. And that's mismanagement. And that's why I think, if you haven't read it, and I think most of you have, the interview that our friend Felipe Cardenas did with Carlos Bocanegra, and talking about not wanting to be in that scenario where you have to rebuild from scratch. You don't want to be there. Part of that is developing along the way and having a roster with a range of ages and having players who are playing at a range of ages. So you're not starting fresh every time you want to, go out into the market. Chicago's about to have to do that because for whatever reason, and I don't know if this is front office, I don't know if this is Veljko Paunovic, I don't know if it's a combination of the two, either are not selecting the right young players to bring in, or they're not doing a good enough job of developing them, or they're just giving up on them too soon, or all of the above. And it's going to hurt Chicago. Even as bad as they've been hurt in the last couple of years by the stuff, it's going to hurt them even more next year and the year after, where they don't have a base.
I mean, and you look at the rest of the roster. You mentioned Schweinsteiger and Gaetan and Nikolic. And you look across the board and you sit there and go, okay. And that's about the gauge of reaction I have when I'm looking at the rest of the talent pool. Przemysław Frankowski, he's okay. Kappelhoff, he's okay. And when you have this C+-ish kind of a response when you're looking at the rest of the first team, you set yourself up. And going back to the idea behind what Carlos Bocanegra and Atlanta United are, you don't want to have your roster and your team be a big sine wave when it comes to capabilities and what you're doing on a yearly basis. You want it to be as straight lined as possible and be as consistent as possible. And you don't want to have all of this ups and downs and reactions and counteractions and all this kind of stuff. And with the Fire, you're coming to the bottom of that sine wave again, with age and talent and contracts all coming to the fore. And then you wonder when that upswing is going to happen, and it would take time for that to go, instead of it being, all right, let's get that next wave in here and let's get them ready to go. There's going to be a gap unless something happens I don't know about, and they really just completely switch things around. But there's going to be that dip once again for another couple of seasons before that anticipated rise in the sine wave happens again. And you never want that as a franchise.
Out of players who have more than 1,000 minutes played this season, not even getting into the quality of it, just playing minutes for Chicago, they have two that are under the age of 28, Frankowski and Jordy Mihailovic. They have 3, 4, 5, 6 over the age of 30. That's a problem. And that's why, as bad as it's been for Chicago, it's not looking like it's going to get any better when they start the rebuild, because there's just not much to work with. Let's take a break. We'll talk about what's going on around MLS today, what the schedule looks like. We'll try to help you a little bit with your fantasy teams as well. We'll talk prize picks if you haven't checked that. John's cackling because he needs the help. And we'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apolanski Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, July 17th. It's a WallPass Wednesday. Use that hashtag and tweet at us at Soccer Down here, and we'll get to some of your questions and thoughts. But let's look at the MLS schedule today. It starts tonight in Atlanta with Houston coming to town. We'll get into plenty of that in hour number 2 with Mike Conti and Doug Robertson joining us to talk about it. Also at 7 o'clock, the New England Revolution host the Vancouver Whitecaps, who Vancouver's coming in 3 straight losses, 3 draws before that. New England unbeaten in their last 6, 3 wins, 3 draws. They did blow a 2-0 lead in D.C., but they did hold on with 10 men to get that point. Kind of a weird set of reactions coming out of Audi Field in that one. But New England should be getting their new Argentine forward, Gustavo Bo, tonight. His P1 visa has been acquired. He is ready to go, and I think they throw him straight into the lineup tonight.
Yeah, he was in a box watching the match the last time out. So he was getting things available from on high. Juicebox purveyors have New England at minus 275 to win, Vancouver at plus 750.
Yeah, that feels about right. Wouldn't touch that one with a 10-foot pole. Vancouver's missing Ali Adnan. He is suspended tonight. New England, Wilfred Zahibo is suspended. They're not really missing anyone else, and I think they get Bo in the lineup tonight, and we see what he can do. I mean, his track record, scored goals at Xolos in Liga MX, scored goals for Racing during his time there, over 40 and over 100 matches. That's a pretty good pedigree, and he could come in and take a New England team that is pretty good under Bruce Arena to another level, and they could be somebody to keep an eye on in the second half of the season. I think New England gets a pretty comfortable win there. Chicago hosting Columbus, 8 o'clock tonight. Chicago had the chance to pick up 6 points over 2 bad Ohio teams. Well, they already threw 3 points away. They lost to Cincinnati. Now they get Columbus coming in, who is horrendous. 1 win in their last 15. 1, 13, and 1 in their last 15.
Rare air.
Well, Chicago is just all over the place. They've got 1 win in their last 6, and we remember it well. They've got 1 draw and 4 losses. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I don't think it's going to be pretty however it turns out.
No. In our discussions with our friends up in Canada at Barn Burner, I was saying that past results for me pending in my brain with Chicago. I don't recommend this for your viewing habits for the evening. I'm anticipating that this one's going to be quite ugly. Juicebox purveyors have the Fire at minus 163 and Columbus to win at plus 425.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I would put it, too, roughly around that. I mean, Chicago's the big favorite here. I just don't believe in them. And they've given you no reason to believe in them. So stay away from that one unless you want to, have your eyeballs be
Daniel,
on fire.
Avoid with Prize Picks.
Probably. I mean, I have to see what the numbers are, and we'll get there in a minute. Toronto hosting the Red Bulls. This is the other game of the night outside of the Atlanta match. Toronto won their last one. They've won 2 of their last 6. They're 2-2-2. Red Bulls have won 3 of their last 6. They're 3-2-1. You had handball gate, or not throw-in gate. Sorry, not handball gate. We'll have handball gate another time. There's tons of gates. You had throw-in gate in this one, and the more that I've seen out of this I can't wait to see what Pro says about it, because they're in a situation when you look at it from a referee perspective, they don't want to come out and blast Alan Kelly, because there's been a couple times that he's been blasted lately. So they don't want to come out and do what they did to him in Seattle, where it's like, yeah, we kind of had to call the foul once it went to VAR. We didn't really want to, because the ref should have blown the whistle when the goalkeeper was down. Well, in this case, there's nobody else to put the blame on. You can't blame the AR. Like there's nothing when you look at that you can do to blame the AR. He makes the call as he sees, and everything mechanically is correct. Alan Kelly said that he verbally overruled it, which gives him an out because you can't prove that he didn't. There was no motion. He didn't blow the whistle, which is what you typically see in the situation. I mean, if you think back, when you see an AR point one way and the center referee overrules him on who's getting the throw or if it's a goal kick or a corner, the ref's usually pretty clear in blowing the whistle, making sure that there is a true restart, making sure everyone knows what's happening and in play. You didn't get any of that here. So I want to see how Pro handles it. All that said, Red Bulls come in after a win over their rivals. And they come in after a big come-from-behind draw against their other rivals. And now they go to Toronto. I wonder where their emotional level will be, and I wonder if Toronto, now that they've got Altidore, now that they've got Bradley, and they're coming in after an emotional win over Montreal on the road, I want to see where Toronto is. I feel like Toronto's the favorite in this one, but not by much.
Juicebox purveyors have Toronto at minus 143 to win.
Right.
Red Bulls to win at plus 350.
That's a little high. That's an intriguing number.
That's what I thought that you would say.
Yeah, that's a little higher than I would have thought. I would have thought this would have been closer to Toronto win draw than giving the Red Bulls that big of a number. The Red Bulls are just difficult, and we all know this, but Toronto, I think, has to hit their stride here. They have to. I mean, they're up against it. They are in the playoff hunt, but now that they have all the pieces back, they've got to hold off Orlando and the Revolution, who have added pieces. That's going to be the race for the final spot, unless Chicago's got to win tonight to have any chance of even still being in that conversation. But I think they blew their chance with the loss against Cincinnati. So they've fallen 4 points behind Toronto, and Toronto's got a game in hand. Orlando's 1 point back. New England is 2 points back. New England also plays tonight. Toronto's got the pressure on them. Red Bulls, in some ways, are playing with house money tonight. They're on the road. They're 2-4-3 on the road. That's a decent road record. If they get a win, they're 1 point behind Philadelphia at the end of the night. Or no, 2 points behind Philadelphia, sorry. They'd be on 34 points. They'd be in second place. And this is something Atlanta United has to keep an eye on. If Atlanta gets a win, they would be 3 points behind Philadelphia with a game in hand. Both Red Bulls and Atlanta are on 20 matches played. Red Bulls are 1 point ahead in third place. Atlanta's in fourth. The battle for the top four is could get to a battle for the top five with NYC factored in too because they have games in hand, but it's going to be tight. And nights like tonight where the Red Bulls are playing, Atlanta's playing, it's going to be some pressure on both teams to not look at the scoreboard, but you do have to know what's going on around you.
I was going to ask who gets the duty to be the designated scoreboard / app watcher this evening.
Well, you're not really worried about it in the game because it's not going to affect what you're doing. Like from the team perspective, it's not going to affect anything right now. Get down to decision day. I have a feeling that decision day will affect who's hosting, who's going on the road, what the matchups could be. I think you could see a dramatically different playoff picture at the end of decision day. I think it's going to be that tight. But tonight, I mean, you're interested. You're more interested when you finish up. And for Atlanta, they'll finish up an hour before the Red Bulls and Toronto will. But that Red Bulls-Toronto game, that's a massive one in the Eastern Conference. What do you think is going to come out of it?
I think it's going to be a draw. I think nothing is resolved at the end of the evening. You have a short week, which always plays into it for me. And I know that we've seen Toronto recently get the results that they're looking for to try to climb the table. I just think that when you look at Red Bulls on a night like this, they are more prone, I would think, to grind out that kind of a result. I don't necessarily think it's going to be all that pretty by the end of it. I think it'll be an exciting watch. It may not be the prettiest thing aesthetically on the field, but I'm honestly looking at something along the lines of 1-1.
Now, I got to make a big distinction here. Chicago will be not a good team to watch, not a good match to watch. Chicago and Columbus will be ugly.
That's painful.
Toronto and Red Bulls is not, I wouldn't say that it's not going to be pretty to watch. I think it's going to be very entertaining because you have two good teams. There's a bit of a rivalry there. Remember their Eastern Conference playoff series a couple years ago. And you have a team in Toronto that wants to play with the ball and they want to control possession. You have a team in Red Bulls that want to destroy everything about possession and destroy everything about a team with the ball. That's a good matchup. So I wouldn't say it's a bad match to watch. I'd never say that about that team. Not at all.
I'm just I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm splitting the hairs when it comes to the idea. I think that when you look at the Chicago-Columbus match, that's just going to be flat painful. If you're looking for something in Toronto and Red Bulls where they're going to light up the scoreboard, that's not what you're going to get is what I'm getting at.
I think you might be wrong.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Why do you think they won't light up the scoreboard?
I just think that Red Bulls defensively will try to clamp down on Toronto. And like I said, it's 1-1 for me is probably the extent of everything.
Nah, that's not how Red Bulls play, though. They're not they don't clamp down. They want to make the game wild and crazy. I mean, it was 3-3 here. You know, the last time these teams played, Red Bulls won 2-0 in September, but you go back to 2017, there was a 4-2 Toronto win. I don't think it's going to be a tight, cagey game. Now, could they cancel each other out in some ways? Sure. That can happen in a Red Bulls match, but clamp down, I don't see New York sitting back. I don't see New York defending deep. I don't see any of that. I think they will pick their line of confrontation and figure out how they want to, punish Toronto with their press. Do they want to do it from the goalkeeper? I think if it's Quentin Westberg, probably not. He's better with his feet. If it's Bono, yeah, you would. So you might back off a little bit and then start to trap and press 40 yards from goal or 20 yards inside Toronto's half or wherever you set that line. But I think then New York wants to make the game very open and fast. And when you get a game like that, generally you're going to find goals in it. I think with a team like Toronto, Alejandro Pozuelo, if you get him into space, he's going to create. Bradley, if he gets space to hit a ball to open the field up, he will. Altidore, we know what he can do in these moments. Red Bulls the other way, Brian White playing great right now. Daniel Royer playing great right now. And if they create those turnovers, then they're going to have chances going the other way. I could see a 2-2. I could see a 3-2. I could see a game like that more often than a 1-0 or a scoreless draw. I wouldn't expect anything like that out of this one. I think it's hard for Red Bulls matches to be there.
Yeah, I don't see it as a scoreless draw. I think that the Red Bulls defensively will create those opportunities, but at the same time, I don't think that they're going to cash in on them as many that we've seen them do it in the past. So that's why I think it's going to be 1-1. But I think that if you're looking for something completely and totally off the rails crazy, I wasn't going to see it just because of midweek more than anything else.
Yeah, I would not rule that out in this one. I think the Red Bulls can create chaos, so I'll be curious to see if they rotate. That's maybe the bigger question here. I don't think Toronto is really in a position to do that. They're going to have to play their main guys. They've missed so many of them for so long that they're just going to have to deal. Red Bulls, I wonder if they might rotate a couple faces here, but they've gotten healthy too lately. You've got Bradley Wright Phillips who could come back and start. He hasn't done that in a while. You've got Kaku who could come back into this team. You've got Derek Etienne back from Gold Cup duty. You've got some faces you can rotate in too if you're the Red Bulls, and you get your back line back together. Kamar Lawrence, Aaron Long, Tim Parker, Michael Murillo, you get those guys back together, and then you can play a lot more open if you're the Red Bulls in terms of that press because you have your back four back in-house. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I'll definitely be flipping it on once we finish up at the Benz to keep an eye on the second half. It's 4 interesting matches tonight in terms of the playoff picture, except for 3 interesting matches and one that's Chicago-Columbus. That'll be a dud. But in terms of the playoff picture, Chicago's got to win to stay within shouting distance and keep pressure on to make it a 4-team race for the final spot instead of 3. Let us know what you're thinking about that from a fantasy perspective. We'll get to Atlanta and Houston in a minute. New England, Vancouver, I don't know where Bo and his number is going to be straight out of the gate, but you might want to take a look at it. I think New England will find goals, so New England attackers would be a good play tonight. Now, you got to look from a fantasy perspective about what the rest of their week looks like, and go back and check out yesterday's show if you need to get those tips from the commish when you look at so many teams with double match week this week, because there's 2 games tomorrow as well, and those teams will have double match week. Cincinnati, D.C., we'll see D.C. on Sunday. Portland and Orlando. There's a lot of very interesting decisions when it comes to fantasy this week.
Yep, and most of mine have been spun off toward double play, although following the commish's advice, I think I did take a couple of singles. I'll have to look at my lineup, but I think the Vela variant was one of the singles that I took this past week.
Yeah, if there's singles that you like, take them. I think you're looking first at the double match weeks, and if you have spots or there's just a matchup you really like with a team playing one match, then go for it. Vela, I think, is a good play in general every week, but this would be a week on a single match week that I'd be a little more reluctant because it's a rivalry game with LA. But then the flip side of that argument is that those games have been crazy from time to time.
And that's why I went with it.
So, could be. I mean, you had a 1-1 to finish out the series last year. You had a 2-2 before that. You had the 4-3 in March, the first El Tráfico. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible. But look at your double match weeks. Get your fantasy team set up. If you have Atlanta, Houston, New England, Vancouver players, make sure you get them in before 7 o'clock tonight. You might want to check the lineups as well because you could get some craziness on these kind of weeks. And when you get a double match week, you do have to think about, could that player be rested in the second game? We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about prize picks. We'll also talk about some news and notes from around the league, and we'll get a couple of your tweets in before the hour is done. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire, and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolanski of Apolanski Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, July 17th. Let's take a look at the board from our friends over at Prize Picks. MyPrizePicks.com. Use the code SDH when you sign up. You'll get up to 25% of your initial deposit, up to $1,000 matched. If you got that kind of scratch, if you got those juice boxes, go ahead and have fun with it. But you'll also get a free $25 two-pick play to get you started. And if you don't find a lot of success with it, if you get half of it right, you'll still get a good chunk of money back. It's a pretty sweet deal. So go over to myprizepicks.com, get signed up, use the code SDH. You can download the app as well for either Android or iOS. When you look at the board for matches tonight, the board, the way the points work, it's 5 points for a goal, 3 for an assist, 1 for a shot, 1 for a shot on target. You lose a point for a yellow card, you lose 2 points for a red card. Very simple scoring. The number on the board, you're picking if you think they're going to go over that number or under that number. It's the easiest way to do daily fantasy. So your MLS board for tonight, Freddie Montero at New England, 5.5. Yeah. Joseph Martinez, 8.5. Albert Ellis, 8. Jossie Zardes, 4. Josie Altidore, 7.5. Daniel Royer, 8. Let's see, those are tomorrow. Alejandro Pozuelo, 7. Mauro Manotas, 4. Carlos Heel, 3. Man, they do not like Carlos Heel.
Nope.
And then you've got some LAFC and LA Galaxy picks already on the board. So you can go ahead and look at tomorrow. Wayne Rooney, 6.5. DC and Cincinnati. Diego Valeri, 5.5. Portland and Orlando. Nani's at a 7. You can look ahead to the El Tráfico on Friday. Zlatan, 8. Adama Diamande, 6.5. Carlos Vela, 11. Getting into double digits. Those are big numbers to hit. And Diego Rossi at 7. You can mix and match. You can make 2 picks, 3 picks, 4 picks. You can even mix and match sports. You've got the PGA on the board, PGA Tour. You've got tennis. You've got the WNBA. You've got baseball. The CFL is on the board, or it will be for the upcoming games this weekend. You've got esports on the board for their next competition, NASCAR, MMA, all the things. The ones that jump out to me for tonight, Heel, 3 points. I like the over on that.
Yep.
That's the one that grabs me the most. Montero, maybe the under, 5.5. I could see New England winning that 2-0, 3-0.
Yeah.
Josie at 7.5, Royer at 8. Those kind of scare me. I'd stay away. Pozuelo at 7. I don't know how that game's going to go because of the chaos that could result from it. If I had to pick one of those 3, I'd probably go Josie 7.5 and go over because I think he's the most likely to get a goal out of that group. That's probably where I'm at.
Yeah, anything Red Bulls Toronto. Listening to those numbers, I wasn't a fan, but yeah, for me it would be the Carlos Hill number at 3. I'm like, yeah, grab that one and go.
Yeah, he's been low all season, and I think he generally over delivers. So, all right, let's get into the Twitters. I'm sure we have a few tweets on a WallPass Wednesday. What are folks saying?
Well, I think Allie Cupertino's the winner so far this morning. She says, trying to listen to the show and someone at work keeps coming in to talk to me. How rude is it for me to continue to turn up the volume during the conversation? Well,
I don't know if we should have read that out, but anyway. Allie, thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
Yes, that. Steve Bruce is now your new head coach at Newcastle. Pretty much. 11th gig in 21 years as a manager.
Why do you do this, Newcastle?
Why do you do this, Mike Ashley?
No, it's the
because
whole
it's
thing.
financially feasible.
No, it doesn't even matter. You could go hire a guy from the 3rd division that's actually done something and won something and maybe like plays something that's more interesting than a wet box of noodles. I mean, no, it's not about it being financially feasible. If it's financially feasible, at least take a chance. At least do something different. It's not even that. It's stupid. You get so many recycled. How 11? 11.
Yeah, this is his 11th managerial gig in 21
What has he
years.
done
Here's
in
his
any of
record.
them?
Here's his record. 348, 227, and 329. A 385 winning percentage.
Winning percentages are dumb. So I'm not going to let that be the thing that decides it here because, yeah, you're looking at wins, points, wins, losses, draws. It's more complicated. It's not as easy of a transition. I'm not worried about that. What has he done at any of these jobs? That's what I want to know. Like, has he accomplished anything as a manager? He got Birmingham City to the First Division playoffs in 2002.
Yep.
And he
runner-up
it was a
4 years later.
championship runner-up in 2007. He got Hull City championship runner-up in 13, FA Cup runner-up in 14. That's probably his biggest accomplishment. And championship playoffs in 2016. So he hasn't gotten a team promoted. What about the other side? Has he gotten a team relegated?
I think Hull, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Hull was relegated when he was manager, yeah.
Yeah. It's just bland.
He's a
Like, it's
championship
not even-
manager continually given Premier League gigs. He's
Not
Neil
even-
Warnock.
It's not even bad. It's bland. It's boring. He's not somebody who's been a complete and utter failure everywhere he's been, because he hasn't. He's won more games than he's lost or drawn. He's just there. He's not going to take them any higher than they've been.
No.
He's not going to make any dramatic changes to the way the team plays to make it more positive. He's not going to do any of that. It's going to be bland. It's going to be vanilla. It's going to be generic. It's going to be boring. And I can tell you what the comments will be after matches. You're going to get, in the first 2 months, you're going to get a lot of, well, I need to see the effort. I need to see the work rate. Well, I'm looking for the spirit of the squad, and a bunch of nothing. A bunch of just stuff that doesn't mean anything. So, I mean, he walked out on Sheffield Wednesday to take this gig.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just nothing. I mean, I don't even know if he's going to get him relegated, but it's just there's.
I
no
think
excitement
they're one of my
about it.
favorites.
Well, that's about the squad. Like, you could have hired Jose Mourinho, and with this squad right now, you're going to have problems. That's not even a Steve Bruce thing. Like, that's what's so annoying about it, is that, I mean, everybody flies off the handle because Steve Bruce gets this gig. It's just boring. Because he's not horrible. He's just not exciting, not good.
He's there.
Not interesting. And he's inheriting an awful squad. Like, they've let Rondon go. They've let Jose Perez go. Those were your two most interesting players outside of Miguel Almiron, and they're gone. And now what? So, I don't know. It's just, when you see clubs run this way, and Mike Ashley's a whole nother mini-series of nonsense that we could have, and nobody wants to hear that.
There's your
It's
hashtag.
bad. No, it's that nobody wants that.
Mini-series of
awful.
nonsense.
It's awful. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad for the game. It's bad for a club that should be bigger than they are. And it's bad for the fan base that now has to make decisions on, should I keep supporting this? So when you see teams who are good teams but having a bad run or dropping some results or whatever, and you get fans talking about walking out, point them to Newcastle and say, no, it could really be worse. You could really have everything in place to be one of the bigger teams in the Premier League, and they're just not. I mean, let's imagine this fantasy land. Let's imagine the fantasy land that Newcastle hired a manager like a Mauricio Pochettino, who wants to develop a project and wants to build something and not go out and outspend everybody, but wants to build something. You have a huge stadium. You have an unbelievable fan base. You have the potential to make big money And if you hire somebody and you just let them have what they need to do that, not go be Manchester City, not go be Chelsea, not go throw stupid money around on transfers, but build something. If you're blind, and Mike Ashley might be, you still would hear about what's going on at Tottenham and say, you know what? Why don't I do my version of that? Steve Bruce ain't that guy.
No.
That's the problem, is that you could go get somebody and say, you know what? We're not going to spend crazy money. I'm not going to spend money hand over fist. I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to give you what you need to be successful, and I'm going to give you time. That should be appealing to any manager who wants to build something, and that's what Newcastle could be, because I still think they are the sleeping giant in England. Like, there's not another club like them. I don't think there is one. I don't think there's another club that could, if handled correctly, become a major club in England. I mean, I guess people always want to say your Aston Villas and your West Hams and the London clubs like that, but I think Newcastle has everything in place except an owner who gets it, and whoever, and if it's the owner making the decisions, then the decisions that he's making. Because there's no reason why they should be in the situations that they are time and again. And you're just there again. You've taken a step back in being interesting and doing things in a way that is appealing to a fan base. And now you've got fans who are like, you know what, I love this club and I want them to be successful, but I don't want to support it. I don't want to be there. I don't want to give Mike Ashley my money anymore because I'm that frustrated with it. And that's a shame.
Katie Weaver, just when I was starting to get interested because of Miggy, Lord would have rather seen Big Sam, honestly. Who's the Steve Bruce of MLS?
No. That's where I'll put Steve Bruce ahead of Big Sam, because Big Sam plays even worse soccer. Like, I just have no time for Big Sam and that nonsense. Steve Bruce of MLS. Let me think. Trying to think of a current one, because when you think about comparisons like that, like I would have put Pablo Mastroeni in the Big Sam conversation, just super defensive and blah. I'm looking.
Who's just there?
Looking. That's a good one, because I don't know if there is one. I don't think there really truly is a Steve Bruce. No, because he's doing stuff. I mean, it's not working most of the time, but he's trying things and doing these weird tactical moves, and he's at least interesting from that perspective. I mean, it probably would have been Dominic Kinnear, Frank Yallop, like that era where it's just kind of there and kind of basic and kind of simple and not awful but not good and just kind of blah. Dominic Kinnear would have probably been that guy. That would have been the one. So let's take a break here. Let's get Mike Conti on the line. We'll start talking Atlanta and Houston tonight at the Benz right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolanski of Apolanski Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Morning, spoke to the media on.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, July 17th edition. It's a match day. It's a Wednesday. It's Mike Conti joining us right now. What's up, Mike?
Hey, guys. What's going on?
Getting ready for tonight, looking around the league, talking Steve Bruce hired at Newcastle and Miguel Almiron being sad about it, probably, maybe. I don't know. Don't want to put words in his mouth, but it can't
At
be
least
the most
it's not
exciting
Anthony
appointment.
Hudson.
That's very true. It could have been worse, sadly. It's not, thankfully, for Newcastle fans, but I don't know if it's much better. I don't want to talk Newcastle because that just makes my head hurt. If you had to come up with a tagline for tonight's match with Atlanta and Houston, it's kind of a big one. I mean, it feels like a sneaky big match at this point in the season. How would you sell this one?
Well, give me a second to think up a snappy tagline. I mean, the thing that stands out to me is how desperately both teams need a positive result tonight. And, that means 3 points, not one. Houston is below the playoff line all of a sudden in the West and starting to lose ground because teams like San Jose and Colorado and Portland, obviously, we expect them to be there at the end, and they're starting to climb now with all these home matches that they have. So Houston really, the good news for Atlanta is no one in the East is really doing anything right now, so it's not like they're losing a ton of ground even during this rough stretch. Houston is losing a lot of ground, and historically they have not been good on the road at all under Wilmer Cabrera. They've lost 17 road matches over the last season and a half, but 12 of them have been by only one goal. So they've lost a ton of road matches, but they have been oddly competitive during that stretch. And then you have the injury subplot with Atlanta United, and you almost wonder, how's Atlanta United going to be able to deal with Houston and their speed and their scoring firepower with so many injuries to the back line? So I guess in terms of a tagline, I would say let's just hope no one gets killed, because that's kind of where we are right now with Atlanta United. It's just catastrophic injury and sending off and all these bad things that have happened in succession, in quick succession, and you wonder how's it going to get any worse, and hopefully it doesn't.
Seems almost Toronto FC-like it points from last year with all of the injuries going on, and I think that in morning on Twitter there one formation and how different is it out of and wing backs and all this kind of stuff. Does it tell you that it's going to be something of a 3-5-2-ish out of necessity with Gressel and insert left winger here?
I think that would be the most logical play. But, I mean, how many times this year have we been, doing this segment the morning of a match or the Friday before a match, and we think we've got the lineup figured out, and then it comes out, and it's exactly what they did the last week. So Frank's been a little bit unpredictable in that regard. 3-5-2 would make a ton of sense to me, just out of necessity. I mean, I don't know how you could play a 4-3-3 with the personnel that's left standing. I mean, you could move Lorenowitz to to center back and then maybe move LGP or Miles outside. I don't think you'd want to do that. I think you've got to go 3-5-2. I think 3-5-2 would be the safe, logical way to go. But I don't know. Frank's been very, very unpredictable, and I guess we'll find out when we get there.
Yeah, there's not a lot of options to play 4 in the back. I mean, I guess you could run Parkhurst out again on the left side. You could run Miles on the right side and Larinowitz and LGP at center back. But, man, I feel like we're then flashing back to 2010 Argentina where they just didn't play outside backs and they played center backs across the back line, and it didn't work out so well. It's very difficult to find a way to get this lineup. I think this is going to be the most anticipated AT&T countdown to kickoff that we've had all season because of what it could look like.
Well, let's workshop this. I mean, here's what I think. I think they go 3-5-2. I think it's Miles, Leandro, and probably, what do you think, Jason? Jeff as your center backs. Julian as a right wing back. Left wing back.
You're going to have to take a chance.
Merrim
Pereira?
Either one, either Merrim or Pereira. You're going to have to take a chance. I would probably go Merrim if he's up for it. If he's not physically up for it, I'd go Pereira.
I like Pereira because of the speed element. And I'm not saying that Merrim doesn't have that element to his game, but I think Pereira might be able to cover a little more ground and is fresher. And then, boy, and you would probably you'd have to have Remedi. Go ahead.
Yeah, from there you've got a lot of possibilities. It's the back five and how you structure it is where it's tricky. Beyond that, it's really just what combination do you want, because you've got Remedi, Nagbe, Heineman, Gressel, all for those 3 spots. I would assume it'll be Pitti and Joseph up top. You could get really squirrely and play Pitti as a 10 and play Vasquez and Joseph up top and play 2 behind him. And you could play Heineman, Remedi, Heineman, Nagbe, Remedi, Nagbe, whatever combination you want. But it's the left side, and it's which 3 center backs are the questions for me. I think Gressel on the right side would be the one that would make the most sense. That takes him out of the central midfield conversation. Beyond that, I don't know. You could go 3-4-3 as well. That's the other thing, is you could go 3-4-3 with it. Who knows? And this is the first time this season that I think we've been in this situation.
I'm really trying to think. You would probably know more about the 2017 season than I, because you were doing the matches and I wasn't. But I mean, there was never a point in 2018 where the injuries got to this degree. Where you are so messed up in terms of being able to field a lineup. Atlanta United had injuries last year. Nagbe was out for a while. I think a lot of us forget about that. You lost Garza for quite a bit of time, but you had enough depth to cover for it. And to go back to John's Toronto analogy, I mean, it really does have overtones of TFC last year, where all the injuries came in the same position group. And I don't really ever remember Atlanta United having an injury crisis to this degree. And in a way, it's kind of amazing that they've done as well as they have done in the midst of this, where, since the international break, without Barco, without Villalba, with Joseph missing time, with Escobar now red card or suspended twice for cards, with Leandro suspended once for cards, with an out-of-gas Parkhurst, with Breck Shea now out, with Mikey Ambrose out for most of this, George Bello, Kevin Kratz out for all of it, 2-3-1 over that span, against some pretty good teams. That's actually, all things considered, pretty good with what they're dealing with right now. And they're 2 wins away from winning a major trophy. So I guess it could be worse. But
it definitely could be.
It's very, very frightening looking ahead at these next couple matches in particular, where you've got Houston with a lot of speed tonight that's going to be testing your back line repeatedly. a team that scored 4 goals on you last year. DC is wobbly. I feel pretty good about Atlanta United being able to get something positive out of Sunday. But then you go into LAFC, and right now that's feeling like a very, very daunting task. Maybe you get Barco back by then. Who knows? So, like I said, it's fortunate that no one in the East has really done anything right now, and you're not losing ground in the East. I just worry about the attrition, the exposure to injury for the players who have not gotten hurt yet because they're putting in so many minutes, and just where it would put Atlanta United from a confidence standpoint, because these guys don't like to lose. They don't like to lose at all. We saw that on Sunday firsthand. This team does not have fun when they're losing games, and that concerns me because there's a lot of things outside of the players and the club's control right now that's going against them. They aren't getting breaks. We could have a big, big discussion about how matches are not being officiated appropriately and how that's exposing star players to injury. We could probably do a full show on that. We could do a full show on how the match compression has gotten to this point. But the fact is Atlanta United's in it, and they've got to find a way to play through it. And it's been very, very difficult.
Ike Mann chimed in with an idea about Darlington Nagbe at left wing back.
Okay, yes,
I'm not
but
completely
he could do that. He absolutely could do that. I would even wonder if situationally within the match, Darlington Nagbe could even drop back in possession. Didn't he do that? Was it the Philadelphia match, Jason, or one of the early season matches where Nagbe had to drop back in possession? I think because what happened?
He's done that multiple times where he becomes the central midfielder, and they don't do it a ton like they did 2017, especially. It was Jeff Lorenowitz dropping in possession as a center back, but not as defensively as a center back. Nagbe's done that from time to time, but Eichmann's idea about him playing left wing back, when you look at Houston and you look at the threat they have defensively, they're not so great. And Atlanta can take advantage of that. But their attack, Albert Ellis especially, on that side of the field, you have to think about that when you think about how you're going to defend tonight and how you're going to structure yourself. Nagbe's a player who I think can run with Ellis. I don't think he can deal with him physically, but I don't know who can in this league, to be perfectly honest. That might be a solution. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, because you need the speed element. I still would lean towards Pereira. I think that's an awful lot to throw at a 19-year-old.
That's my concern.
But you're at home.
I just don't think he's strong enough defensively. And I think against another team, I'd be a little more willing to go there. You know where I might go with this? And you might have to get really unorthodox. Like the way we describe this match tonight might be really, really interesting, because I could see a scenario where it's a 3-4-3, and it doesn't necessarily play like the 3-4-3 did earlier this season, but you see a situation with your 3 center backs, and if it's Parkhurst or Lorenowitz with Miles and LGP, either one's fine. Nagbe on the left side of the 4, Heinemann, Remedi in the middle, Gressel on the right. So Gressel can function as a right wing back.
Right.
Nagbe is sort of a left wing back, sort of a midfielder who can tuck in, but he's got to deal with Ellis, and that's his first task. And then you get 3 up top, and you could get Merrim, Pitti, and Joseph together, or Pereira, Pitti, and Joseph together. That might be a way to try to find some balance.
It could be, and I the other part of it, the other element too, is I'm not really keen on taking Merrim out right now. I think he's been really good lately, and I don't want to take him out just for the sake of trying something with Dion Pereira. Merrim would be a little bit more steady going down the left.
I want him going forward too.
Absolutely.
I'd rather not have him in a wingback role if you can help it, because you want him creating chances. He created 6 against Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting. I think it's a real test of Frank's creativity now. I think there's an inaccurate narrative out there that he's too rigid, too inflexible. I think tonight will prove how flexible and creative Frank can be, because he's going to have to be. And let's see how it works. Houston's got a big advantage because they played at home on Friday. Atlanta played in Seattle on Sunday and then had to fly 5 hours. So the other thing that really scares me about tonight, and this is something we have seen repeatedly lately, is legs, especially in the final 15 minutes. Gave up the game-winning goal in the last 15 minutes in Seattle. Gave up the equalizer in stoppage time to Red Bulls. Now, Atlanta also scored twice in the last 20 minutes against Red Bulls, but they gave up the goal at the very end. Chicago, that was an anomaly match. But Toronto, obviously, it was a bad call, but you gave up a goal in stoppage time. So I really do worry about the legs. It almost feels like I'm not going to be comfortable unless Atlanta United has a 2-goal lead on Houston going into the final 20 minutes of this match tonight, because I've seen it repeatedly lately, and there's nothing really Atlanta United can do about it, but the legs have been faltering. They've been, even against St. Louis to an extent. Now, I know that match changed tactically in the final 20 minutes because St. Louis was really going for it, but there have just been symptoms lately of Atlanta United not being able to maintain their legs at the end of matches. Having to make a first-half sub really hurts. Really, really hurts. And that's been something that Atlanta United has had to do in each of their last 3 league matches. So, maybe just keeping everyone upright through the first 45 minutes will be a big help to that tonight, too.
I had 2 thoughts going through my brain as to where I wanted to go next with you, but since you went in that direction, Mike, I'll go ahead and follow. Brek Shea. And I guess it's just with him out for the remainder of the season, can you lend some perspective from being able to call the matches with Shea this season, what he meant in getting Atlanta United to where they are? Because I think the expectation level was for him to be a spot starter and come in and give you quality minutes, but because of injuries, he had to do other things and a lot of other things. And so I think that, we saw a different Brek Shea than was anticipated, and it turned out to be a tremendous acquisition up to the point, obviously, where the injury happened.
Yeah, and then you throw on the versatility as well, where he filled a couple different roles for this team, and then the chemistry that he suddenly developed with Justin Miram, where those two coming down the left was producing some really special stuff. It's really a shame. Brek has been a solid pro, never once complained about the role that he was thrown into, never once complained about the treatment he was getting from fans at the beginning of the year, which I thought was deplorable from some, not from all, let me be clear, but from some. I thought some fans were incredibly impatient with him, unfairly so. Never complained about any of it. Those are the kinds of guys that you wish you had a million of in your dressing room, because he's a high-character guy who was willing to accept whatever role he needed to take. And he's going to be missed terribly. And I don't get the sense that George Bellows' return to play is imminent. Bello is going to have to play in USL a little bit. He's going to have to really work hard to get to 90 minutes match fitness. So you are going to badly miss Brek Shea, and it goes beyond tonight. You're going to have another quandary on Sunday for DC. You'll get Franco Escobar back, but you still don't really have a whole lot of options right now at left back other than Parkhurst, but I think we're of the opinion that Parkhurst can really only give you 90 minutes per week right now at best. So it's a massive, massive loss, and it's not just what he does on the field, it's what he's been doing off the field, and it's a huge bummer. I'm totally crushed for him. It's awful.
So how important is tonight in the grand scheme of things for you?
It's important, but it's not vital because, again, no one in the East is really doing anything. I mean, it's yet another opportunity for Atlanta United to gain ground on the leaders with a match in hand here. And Atlanta United's only earned 1 point in the last 9 possible. So, I mean, you want to see him get 3 points just to kind of create some positive momentum. Everything is so negative right now. But keeping in mind what you're dealing with and what the lineup's likely going to look like, I don't have very high expectations for tonight. And I don't think it devastates you if you don't get 3 points tonight or even a point. There's still plenty of time left in the season. You have 2 trophies that you are 1 or 2 wins away from. I think right now you have to maybe start considering the possibility that with all the injuries, it's just not your year in league play, and that you can get out of this with Open Cup and Campione's Cup and still have a really nice year and maybe make the playoffs and maybe catch lightning in the playoffs. But you have a lot of things going against you right now, and I think you have to concentrate on the things you can control. The injuries are one of the things you can't control. So if you don't win tonight, it doesn't really change my opinion on anything. Obviously, you'd like to win tonight. I would be very, very pleased if they won tonight because it would be a win in the face of a lot of adversity. But if they don't win tonight, I don't think it changes anything long-term the rest of the way for this season.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I feel like a loss tonight or not a win, if it's a draw, it's not the end of the world because of the situation you're in. A win would maybe feel like more than just 3 points if you're able to win in this situation.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky. What is all of our broadcast time today? Let everybody know.
Yeah, we'll be on at 6:30 for the Five Stripes Countdown on 92.9 The Game. Kickoff will be at 7 o'clock. I think we're on Sirius XM tonight as well. I'm not positive of that. But if you aren't in Atlanta, you can always listen on radio.com. And we'll also have stoppage time at 2 p.m. on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page today.
Yeah, and Dukes and Bell are live in the Gulch for 2 to 6:30. So if you get down there early, go say hey, man, and maybe grab a beer and say hey to the guys. I'll probably be crashing on with them at some point.
Okay, yeah, and wear white today. Not just because it's a whiteout, because it's 95 degrees outside, and you want to wear light-colored, light clothing today. That'll go a long way to keeping you upright for this match.
Yes, please do that, and we'll see you guys at the Bends. I'll see you later this afternoon, Mike.
All right, guys, take care.
Let's take a quick break. We've got Doug Robertson coming up, but we'll get a couple of your questions on Twitter right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apolanski Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Let's dip into the WallPass Wednesday timeline for just a bit before Doug Robertson joins us. What do we have, John?
Barnos Prime. He asks, why won't U.S. Soccer put a game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium? Surely the turf can't be the only reason. Mexico didn't seem to have an issue with it.
It's got to be, because I can't come up with another reason other than it's just a scheduling conflict every single time they could have put a game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which feels a little strange. I can't think of anything else. So I don't know. I mean, they didn't really want to play games at the Georgia Dome either and put grass over the field. The women did a couple of times. The men did not. CONCACAF booked the Gold Cup. That's not a U.S. soccer booking, so remember that. And CONCACAF was very high on playing games in Atlanta. Maybe one of the reasons was Jeffrey Webb, who I think he's in jail. I'm not 100% sure. At least he was indicted at one point. He had a home here. So he wanted to bring a Gold Cup final to Atlanta. That would have been great. But then, traffic and stuff and the FBI and other things get in the way. So I don't really know. There's not a logical reason. I mean, the only difference, I think, between the U.S. Federation and the Mexican Federation when it comes to turf is that you had the very high-profile issues with the women playing on turf with the United States and pushing against that because the men very rarely had to play on turf. I believe they played on turf in Chattanooga, and they have not played on turf at Mercedes-Benz, which doesn't make any sense. So I really don't have a valid reason, and it makes no sense. It feels like you're walking away from a great opportunity if you're U.S. Soccer.
And Bart also wondered how much money it would add to the total construction cost of, I'm guessing, grass versus turf.
The construction cost? The production cost? I mean, construction is...
He says construction, but it might be production.
I don't know. I don't know how much it generally costs. I want to say it's under $500,000, somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000 to bring in grass over top of the turf and do it right. So, I mean, that would be a cost. But if you're looking at potentially, if you do a big game here and selling 65,000, 70,000 tickets, I think you're going to be okay. So I don't know. Maybe it's just that. Maybe they don't want to use it for a smaller game. They want to use it for a big friendly because of what that cost could add to it. I don't know. Other than that, honestly, I have no idea why they haven't done it. It makes no sense.
And other observations quickly from Bart. He says, lack of advertising video boards in France compared to the U.S. around the stadium. Very few large screens, very few places to put advertising. Also, not as many bathrooms as we have in the U.S. Hashtag WallPass Wednesday.
Yes, Bart was at the Women's World Cup, not League 1. John forgot about the Women's World Cup already. He was
guilty.
Bart was in France. Why was he in France? I don't know. You already forgot.
Forgot that he field tripped to the Women's World Cup, yeah.
No, not even that. You forgot why he would have been in France. You were like, what's going on in France? I have no idea.
Yeah, pretty much.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, stadiums are very different when you get outside the U.S. I think one thing about the signboards and stuff, Atlanta's done a pretty good job with it to where... And I think it's one of the big selling points for Mercedes-Benz as a venue is that, everything's LED. So, and this was a point made in a great article over at Once a Metro from a Red Bulls fan who came down for the match and talked about how soccer is just part of Atlanta now. It doesn't feel like it's off in a silo. But one fan mentioned, look, you can come here on a Sunday for a Falcons game and it feels like a Falcons house and it doesn't feel like soccer's played here. But you come here for an Atlanta United game, and it feels like Atlanta United's house, and it doesn't feel like the Falcons would ever play here. That's a unique element of it that, again, in my opinion, should be a selling point for anybody to book the stadium, and I think it will be. But U.S. Soccer has not hosted a men's national team game in Atlanta since 1977. The Gold Cup is a CONCACAF booking. 77 U.S. and China at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium as a precursor to bringing the Chiefs back, and 68 at U.S. and Canada. And the only reason that happened is Phil Woosnam was drafted in to be the U.S. coach at that point because they couldn't keep a coach on a regular basis. And he was involved in what was going on with the Atlanta Chiefs and winning a title that year. So that's it. That's your only two men's national team bookings in the city of Atlanta. That's craziness. And now that you have one of the best stadiums in the world, it shouldn't be the case. So we will see what happens with that, and we'll maybe try to get a reason why. We'll see if Doug Robertson knows why. Maybe he does. We're going to talk to him after this break. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolanski of Apolanski Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Well, we are fighting Skype at the moment. Skype is
Shocking.
telling me that Doug Roberson is unavailable, and I'm texting Doug, and he says I am not unavailable. Skype is lying to me or Doug or both of us at the same time.
All of us.
Yeah, so we are still efforting as I'm trying to talk to you guys and produce the show at the same time. So bear with us. John might have an update on Jeffrey Webb's whereabouts.
Yeah, there was an article that was posted in the AJC around Christmas time last year. And at that time, it was discussing and Danny Robbins did the investigation and was looking into his investment properties and where they are. And it looks like there was a mansion in Loganville, which for those of you outside the Atlanta area is a good 45 minutes east of downtown, bought 3 rental properties and paid $850,000 for property now worth $2 million. And so then Danny goes and talks to FBI folks and mentions the relationship with his wife in 2013 and investment properties. So it's a good deep dive into how the fall of the House of FIFA was here in the Atlanta area. So
well, that wasn't the House of FIFA. That was the House of CONCACAF because Webb wasn't up to that point. Warner was up to that point from Trinidad and Tobago. Jack Warner,
right,
who is still being corrupt and doing corrupt
still
things.
Fighting extradition.
Chuck Blazer was one who did turn and work with the FBI to nab people, and Webb was one. Webb came in to replace Jack Warner in charge of CONCACAF and was going to clean everything up, and then it turned out that he was right there with everybody else. If I remember right, there was a story about either an addition to the home in Loganville or a swimming pool being built that was all part of a kickback in terms of traffic sports and TV rights and this and that, and it was a mess. So welcome to the world of CONCACAF, where it does even reach into the metro Atlanta area. And, you know, if Jeffrey Webb hadn't his wife was from the Atlanta area, and that's one reason why he loved the Atlanta area so much and wanted to bring CONCACAF Gold Cup finals here. Don't know if it's ever going to happen now.
Prosecutors say part of the sentencing for one of the individuals pleading guilty in the money laundering conspiracy also used some of that bribe to add a pool to Webb's property.
There you go. And Doug Robertson's with us now.
Yay! Skype wins.
Skype finally wins. What's up, Doug?
How are you?
Doing well. We have a question for you to bridge the gap before we get to Atlanta and Houston. Why does U.S. Soccer not play matches at Mercedes-Benz Stadium?
I think Atlanta or Mercedes-Benz Stadium needs to want to have soccer games.
That also factors in.
I've never really looked into the bidding process for how this works, but I imagine that U.S. Soccer solicits bids from cities to host games. It can't just pick a city like it's a king and the city has to host.
Definitely that.
So Atlanta may not just have wanted to host the games yet. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I'll be
because
interested
to
to see
host,
if it changes.
they have to bring in the grass. They have to,
right?
Or I would assume, need to bring in the grass. And it's a big to do.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see. I think after the Mexico match at the Benz, I wonder if we'll see more international friendlies, whether they're U.S. Soccer related or International Champions Cup, things like that down the road. And I would expect we will, just not sure how fast that happens. We could go into that all day. Let's get into Atlanta and Houston because I think there's a lot to get into there as well. It's a really weird match to predict because of Atlanta United's lineup issues and especially at outside back. I mean, how Atlanta plays tonight, 4-3-3, 3-5-2, 3-4-3, something weird and creative. I think everything's on the table.
Yeah, I think it most likely. I was listening to Conti speaking before I came on. I don't know how they don't do a 3-5-2. I guess they could do the 3-4-3, but it was so bad earlier this season. They never had enough players on defense. They never had enough players on offense. It just seems like it's a disaster waiting to unfold. The 3-5-2 I like because the wingbacks can try to funnel Elise and Kyoto back toward all the defensive midfielders and center backs, just giving them more bodies that they're going to have to try to go through, or can try to push them into the corner. And I would be more than fine with Elise and Kyoto pumping in crosses to Gonzalez Perez and Robinson, rather than letting them get around to the end line and cutting in on goal.
A lot of folks, Doug, looked at the match this past weekend, and I think that if you talk to 10 different people, you might end up with 10 different ways and 10 different takeaways from the match itself. A lot of folks thought that one team was more dominant than the other. You'd ask somebody else, and they'd say it was fairly competitive across the board with a couple of lapses here and there. How would you characterize the Atlanta United match this past weekend, going to Seattle and having what went down go down?
I thought Atlanta United was beaten pretty thoroughly by Seattle. I know the scoreline was only 2-1, but Seattle created so many good chances, and it should have put away quite a few of them. Atlanta United looked to me tired. Atlanta United looks, again, out of sync on offense. The past couple of games, really since the return from the international break, has reminded me of the beginning of the season. That's what it feels like to me. Nobody is quite sure. It seems like nobody's quite sure what they're doing and what their teammates are doing. Just a little bit of hesitation all over the place. Passes aren't connecting. Assignments are being missed. Pass-offs from one player to another aren't being made. Guys are in the wrong spots. And as has been the case most of the season, opponents are punishing every mistake. It's, I've written this, and I can't remember if I said this on y'all's show or if it was on the Southern Fried Soccer podcast. You would go back and you would look at the quote sheets the past 2 years under Tata from the opponents. And even when the score was 3-0 Atlanta United or 4-1 or something, the opponents would always say, we had our chances. We just didn't take advantage of ours, and Atlanta United did. Well, this season, opponents are taking advantage of their chances, and Atlanta United mostly isn't. That's just how it kind of feels to me right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is the defense in the past it was reckless at times, and teams had chances. They weren't converting. Now they are. That is definitely the case. How important is this game tonight? It was something I asked Mike. Is it a vital game? Is it just an important game? Is it just a game that you're trying to get through because of the injury situation? Where do you rank it?
I think it's important. Atlanta United needs 3 points, as y'all were talking about in the previous segment, and I've said on your show and on my podcast. Atlanta United just keeps missing opportunities. They should firmly be in first place now in the East, but because Philadelphia has not come out of the international break and played well. DC has 1 win and 9, I think it is, and they just keep spitting away these chances. They've got to get 3 points tonight. You can't keep doing that and eventually hope that everything is going to work out for the best. You make your own luck. And so Atlanta United has got to get 6 points this week, in my opinion, or it's going to start sinking a little bit further away from the top and a lot closer to that red line. And as odd as this is to say, Orlando is playing well, New England is playing well. There could be some challenges, there will be some challenges for those final 2 playoff spots in the East. I still think Atlanta United's firmly going to make the playoffs, but they can't keep doing what they're doing and expect it to be a comfortable situation.
Then how active do you anticipate them being in the transfer window with all of the injuries and, having to kind of be imaginative when you're coming up with your starting 11s? Obviously, there's talk about Mo Adams and Chicago Fire, but how active do you anticipate them including that activity?
I think they're going to try to sign at least one more fullback. They've got to try to sign at least one more fullback. They don't have enough bodies. And we keep hearing every week, Bellows close, Bellows close, Bellows close. Eels said it yesterday on 92.9, but he's not close. Well, I mean, if he's close, we still haven't seen him training. And typically these guys have to train for at least a week with Atlanta United before they'll even play with Atlanta United too. So in my opinion, he's at least 2 weeks away. So they've still got a lot of games in between now and 2 weeks. So they've got to go and get some fullbacks.
What do you think about the seems to be likely acquisition of Mo Adams from Chicago?
At first I didn't really understand it because he is a defensive midfielder, a short defensive 5'6" defensive midfielder. But Frank said yesterday they also see him playing fullback. So now that makes a lot more sense to me. I don't know why you don't just go out and get a fullback if that's the case, because you have Larinowicz, you have Remedi, you have Nagbe, you have Hindman. You already have a lot of guys in the center of the midfield who are healthy. But I guess the price was right or is right for Adams, and they like his particular skill set. So that is who they seem to be targeting.
And with what we're seeing right now, I mean, obviously, you look at the development that we've seen of players over the course of the season. I know that you look at Justin Merriman, he's hopped in fairly well from immediate. Emerson Hindman's come in. We've seen him kind of gradually come to the fore. Then let me ask you about P.T. Martinez and what you've seen from him over the last handful of matches. What's been your observations about where P.T. is going with his game?
I thought most of the good things that Atlanta United did on offense against Seattle came through P.T., but then I also saw those lapses on defense that he just can't seem to push through right now. There were people on Twitter saying that watching the game on television, I wasn't watching on television, there were examples of teammates seeming to gesticulate toward Pitti, if not outright yelling, about his lack of defense. And Atlanta United just completed the trade for Mo Adams. So some breaking news for y'all. And they have waived Gordon Wyatt.
Wow, that's a surprise.
So there's some breaking news. So, there was the stuff last week with Pitti. I'm sure y'all have hashed that to death. He's not going to change, I don't think. Frank's not going to change, I don't think. So something has, I don't know what has to be different, but something is going to have to change. Or this relationship, I don't know what's going to happen with it. I don't want to say it's going to go negative. I'm not sure it can be worse than it might be right now. But Pitti has to start playing defense. And people keep saying, well, he's not a defensive player. He didn't have to play defense or River play. I don't agree with that either. And it doesn't matter. Frank wants him to play defense, so he's got to do it. So we'll just see what happens.
And that's one of the things that I'm curious to see the lineup tonight, to see if you go 3-5-2 and you play Pitti Martinez as a forward with Joseph Martinez. And obviously I think Pitti would drop in behind him more often than not. You're putting him in a position that you're asking him to do less defensively. There's not as much defensive responsibility there. And if he played a 10, or if he played wide in a 3-4-3 or a 4-3-3 or whatever you're looking at. And I wonder if those things start to become considerations in combination with everything else that's going on in terms of injuries and lineups and formation.
Well, but here's the thing about him playing. I understand your point about him playing as a striker, the defensive responsibilities, but the press starts with the strikers. And
yeah, but that's not where I think he's had an issue defensively. I think, and that's where at River, and that was, I think, the point that came up out of Argentina, was that defending up high hasn't really been an issue. I don't think it was at River, and I don't think it's been too much of an issue here. It's the long tracking back, and that was what he mentioned in the interview that is different for him. And that's something that doesn't happen consistently. That's definitely a fact.
Yeah, that is a fact. And the losing the ball and not even putting an effort to run back and get it, not all the time, but there are examples. It's, and the jumping into the air when defensive players are going to pass the ball instead of just trying to complete a solid feet on the ground tackle. It's just fundamentals, that you learn, or at least in America, which is not the best example. We learned playing soccer as opposed to what he's doing. It's just weird. But I'm sure it'll get worked out one way or the other.
So, and this is no doubt off topic before we get into predictions, but Steve Bruce is the Chan Gailey of coaching, huh?
Yes. Steve Bruce. Oh, just throw them all together. Let's see. Who we got? Redknapp, Steve Bruce,
Warnock.
Mark Hughes, Neil Warnock. It's that group of NFL coaches in the 80s and 90s that just kept getting jobs, even though they never succeeded. Roberto Martinez, who I still cannot figure out how in the world got the job coaching Belgium. It's just to me a sign a team has just given up already. Just, we're going to play the season and whatever happens, happens. And now I feel bad for Almiron because this team is going to be in a relegation fight all season. It's hard to enjoy yourself when you're experiencing that stress. And this was the biggest concern I had about Atlanta United, potentially selling Almiron to Newcastle, because President Darren Eales kept saying, we're not going to sell a player to a team in a bad situation. And Newcastle is annually, perennially, always in a bad situation under its ownership. And so that was the thing that surprised me about the sale to Newcastle. And sure enough, Rafael Benitez is gone. Almiron is going to have a new manager, one who really doesn't show a whole lot of tactical acumen. I have no idea about his man management. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think most have said his man management's actually not bad, and a lot of that comes from his track record as a player. But yeah, tactically, it's just Pretty vanilla, and I'll be curious to see where he uses Miguel, if it's out wide or as a second forward, or if he uses him centrally. Who knows? We'll have to see, because this roster is a mess. Newcastle is a whole nother set of issues. We're not even going to try to dig into that one. Let's talk about Atlanta.
Newcastle down here
tonight. Nobody wants Newcastle down here. Nobody would listen. Let's get into Atlanta and Houston tonight at the Benz. We do have predictions from our friend Jarrett. Jarrett went with 2-2 draw tonight. Said he thinks the Wings will struggle against a tough matchup. Legs are heavy after the travel and the schedule. The offense does enough to get the point. John, what say you?
I'm going to go 2-1 Atlanta United. I think that Elise gets one because of the confusion at the back, but I think that Joseph gets one, and I think that Miriam gets one. So it's 2-1, and I think that that sets up the activity on the weekend.
Doug, what are you thinking about tonight?
Did he just really say 2-1?
Yeah, I know. It's shocking. I've never heard that score out of John.
I know, really? I just have zero faith in Houston on the road.
No,
I mean, for a guy who wore black velvet slippers into the press box for an
driving
Atlanta
shoes
game, the lack of courage in your predicted scores is just mind-boggling to me.
Won me a title.
Is that how you use that money to buy those slippers?
Yes, he is the Steve Bruce of predictions.
there you go. Let's see. I think that the Chants are going to be interesting tonight. That's my first prediction.
Oh, boy.
You knew I had to bring that up.
It's true.
I think Atlanta United wins 3-1. I think they'll probably try to bunker a little bit and see if they can beat Houston on the counter. Against Houston, limits that Elise can have to run, and just puts a whole lot more obstacles in between he and the goal. And then they can use Joseph and Pitti on the break and try to break Houston's fragile defense.
Yeah, I keep coming up with about 5 different ways Atlanta United could play this tonight, whether it's in a 4-4-2 that's almost like 4 center backs that do just sit back and play on the counter. You could go 3-5-2. You could go 3-4-3. There's just so many different ways to do it, but I think Atlanta's the better team, and as many issues as Atlanta has, Houston has even more. They've really fallen into the tank since the beginning of May.
They do this every summer, you know?
Yeah, this one's even more exaggerated, and I think part of it was they did have a lot of players away on international duty, and they just don't have the depth to be able to handle it. And then Memo Rodriguez went down with a hamstring. That would have been the player that could have changed it, and that's how thin Houston is. One injury, and they're just nowhere near the same level. And I think it shows up tonight. I think Houston does come out and throws a lot at this game early, and they don't get anything out of it. And then they get frustrated, and it falls apart for them. I think it's 2-0 Atlanta. And I'm kind of with Doug there in terms of how Atlanta approaches it. I think they're cautious, and I think they are going to get numbers behind the ball, especially early, to deal with Elise, to deal with Kyoto, to deal with Manotas. But once you soak up that pressure, Houston is there for the taking. And Atlanta's attack against Houston's defense is a matchup I really like. So I think 2-0. And I think it's a rocky early going where Houston tests you, but then it's a pretty comfortable win at the end of the 90. Doug, what do you have coming up over at the AJC between now and tomorrow?
Well, I posted my predicted lineup, which is already wrong with the waiving of Gordon Wild. I just posted a story about Atlanta United acquiring Adams from Chicago for $100,000 in Shroot bucks, which are not worth as much as a Stanley dollar.
Shroot bucks.
Not worth as much as a Stanley dollar.
Canadian Tire bucks?
And I will obviously be at the game tonight. As soon as that final whistle blows, you'll have a link from me on Twitter at Doug Robertson AJC with a game story. I'll come back and add quotes and context to that. Player ratings, Southern Fried Soccer podcast with Jason Longshore, I hope, unless he has to take a charter home like he did from Seattle.
No charter home. I actually have my own car.
Maybe John can drive you with his black slippers.
I don't want that. Nobody
and
wants
I'll have sidebars on whatever is newsworthy from the game.
Could be a few things. It could be an interesting night at the Benz. Doug, we'll see you in a little bit.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Be good.
Make sure you follow him, Doug Robertson, AJC on Twitter, Atlanta United News Now on Facebook. We're going to take our final break, come back, and finish up with some tweets from y'all right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apolanski Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
I think we've lost John. He's went down the rabbit hole of Area 51 nonsense.
Just briefly.
What's going on with this stuff. Anyway, there's too much going on with Atlanta United at the moment to dig into Area 51 and Little Nas X and remixes. Mo Adams is officially part of Atlanta United squad. Gordon Wild has been placed on waivers, and it was listed as a corresponding move. And the question that just got on Twitter from Christopher Gersel was about the MLS roster rules. And, man, I mean, I can just put my hand up and say I don't have that PhD yet. I feel like I know it pretty well, but...
You got your bachelor's?
No, I don't. It's MLS roster rules. They change on a daily basis. Christopher asked, he said, I was under the impression that all loans by MLS teams result in roster relief during the loan period. So why did we have to waive Gordon Wild to bring in Mo? Shouldn't we have that roster spot already open from loaning Gallagher? Am I missing something? And when you look at the rule at that point, yeah, you would think that during the loan period, the club will receive roster relief, would tell you that Gallagher would not be listed on the roster, and you could just drop Mo Adams into that spot. Don't know if there's more complications. Don't know if there's something that we're missing here. But, yeah, I'm not sure why that's the case. I do think when you look at the big picture on Gordon Wild, he was a player that never quite got over the hump. And this season especially, it felt like, and maybe it's because they tried to find different positions for him to contribute, and it just never really got settled. But Wild didn't look the same at Atlanta United 2 as he did last year at Charleston Battery. He had 7 goals and 3 assists last season in Charleston. He made 8 appearances with Atlanta United 2 this year, scored 1 goal. He played as a wingback from time to time. Defensively, it never really worked out. So it's a move that you hate to see. I thought Gordon Wild had some promise, and I think he still has some promise. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody takes a flyer on him. I think he's got a very talented left foot. I think he fits into certain systems Don't know if he really fits into the way Atlanta United wants to play. And you got to remember about Gordon Wild, what was interesting about him was he came to the U.S. and had an unbelievable year at USC Upstate, and then transferred to Maryland and had an unbelievable year, and decided to go back to school for his junior year. And he had not a great year, not an awful year, but not a great year. And his stock fell, and Atlanta got him on a Generation Adidas deal in the second round, which is pretty rare to see Generation Adidas guys drop that far. It was definitely worth the risk, and it hasn't been, ultimately for a second-round pick to give you what he's given you on loan last year in Charleston and this year, it's not bad. But Adams is a better fit for what this team needs right now. If it is a like-for-like, it makes sense. Now, I don't know the Gallagher loan situation. I don't know why that spot's not open. I don't understand that. From looking at the rosters, Adams was on Chicago's supplemental roster. Atlanta has a reserve roster spot open. I don't think you could have moved the pieces around to make that work. So you had to clear a supplemental roster spot. And if Gallagher wasn't out of a spot, then that was the move you had to make. The only other thing I can think of is it revolving around that Generation Adidas tag, and Atlanta United dropped a Generation Adidas player to add another one. I don't know if that complicated it, but Adams goes into that spot on the roster. Adams is officially part of the squad now. He played with Miles Robinson at Syracuse. Adams is the scrappy defensive central midfielder that I don't think the team necessarily had. Doesn't mean he's going to play a ton. Doesn't mean he might not play at some fullback, and that's what I'm really curious to see. He's very active defensively. When you look at numbers, in box scores after the game, and you look at a player who gets into tackles, makes interceptions, commits fouls, he's very active. He's going to have to improve on the ball a bit, and that's something you're going to look for him to get better at over time here in Atlanta. But right now, today, he feels a need that Gordon Wild did not. And that's something that, if you're able to go get him for $100,000 in GAM, that's really not much in the grand scheme of things. He would play more right now for Atlanta United than Gordon Wild would. And if that's the move you have to make at the moment, that's the move you have to make.
Activity on the Twitters. The Colonel says he needs a billing address in Florida to buy Open Cup tickets outside the supporters section. Good seats.
Yeah, you have to, if you want to buy tickets on Ticketmaster, you have to have a Florida mailing address or billing address. It's really weird. I didn't know that was a thing. It's an interesting thing when it comes to this match. If you want to buy tickets to go as an Atlanta United supporter, you do have to go through Atlanta United supporters groups, and they will have an allocation of tickets, and I'll be curious to see how all that shakes out. So stay tuned on that side. But yeah, Ticketmaster, I tested it last night. You can't buy tickets if you don't have a Florida billing address for your credit card.
And Jared has a point about Mo Adams saying that even if he sticks, he has to fight Wyke and Vint going forward, which is fine.
Well, one's on an MLS deal, and one's on a USL deal, and one's not a professional yet. So don't jump to too big of conclusions just yet. Adams is a good piece. I just look at him as a player that, for whatever reason, didn't get a fair shake in Chicago. Every time I saw him, he did positive things to me in terms of, he's making tackles, he's active, he's involved. He can get better on the ball, I think, and be competent there, or you can pair him up with a player like a Hindman or a Nagbe who is going to be your guy on the ball, and Adams is going to be a little more of that enforcer / hard tackler. He's a different version of that than Remedi. I think Adams is more comfortable sitting as a 6, where Remedi is more of a box-to-box. I think Remedi can play the 6, but he's better as an 8. Adams is more of a true 6. So he gives you a different look. I think, honestly, he's available and he was undervalued, and you're able to get him for a song. So now you see what you can get out of him, and again, I think honestly it comes down to this point right now is that July 17th, for the rest of this season, Mo Adams is a player who would play more minutes with the first team than Gordon Wildwood. And sometimes you have to make those kinds of decisions on the fly. And if he's available and you think he fits and he feels a need, you go get him.
ATL UTD fan number 1, and I think the answer is yes. Is this the first time that Darren hasn't teased us with a riddle before the new arrival?
I don't think so. I'm sure there's been others. I mean, I don't think he's done it with every single addition to the roster, period, outside of the draft. So I'm sure there's been others.
And did we go over Ike Mann's mock-up for a starting 11?
Not the full mock-up, no.
Okay, 3-5-2. Parkey, LGP, and Miles at the back. Then he has in his 5, Nagbe, PT, Gressel, Emerson, Heineman, and Lorenowitz with Miram and Joseph up top.
Sure. I mean, we could just read off a bunch of lineups and say, yeah, that's possible. That's kind of where you're at tonight. I'd like to give Parkhurst the night off if possible, so I would probably lean to Lorenowitz in the back with Robinson and LGP. What's tricky about it, though, is 3 center backs against the way Houston plays is not necessarily the lineup you'd want. So, they're going to try to get down the wings with Ellis and Kyoto, and when you're playing 3 center backs, to deal with that effectively, you're going to have to have 2 wing backs that stay home. And, if you play Nagbe as one of those, that's a very different role for him. Gressel can do it. We've seen it. I don't know. I honestly don't know if this looks like anything we've really seen before. It could be a 4-3-3 in name. It could be a 4-3-3 kind of, but with some wrinkles to it. It could be a 3-4-3 with some wrinkles to it. You might have to get really creative. I think, honestly, all the formation talk about tonight is going to be thrown out the window once the whistle blows, and it's going to be more about the individual battles. You're going to have to deal with Ellis. You're going to have to deal with Kyoto. You're going to have to deal with Manotas. Manotas is the easiest one. Robinson marks him. Cool, you're good. Ellis, who can deal with Ellis on the left side of this team? You don't really have an answer. You don't. Who can deal with Kyoto on the right side? I think Gressel can. Kyoto's faster. Gressel's going to have to be good defensively tonight. But I think that matchup, okay, you can at least feel okay about. The left side, Ellis, is going to be the tricky one. Tomas Martinez in the middle. Good player. Very technical player. Who's going to deal with him defensively? Is that going to be Lorenowitz? Is that going to be Remedi? Is that going to be Heineman? Is that going to be Nagbe? It's going to be down to the individual battles. And you kind of know how Houston's going to come out in a 4-2-3-1. However Atlanta lines it up, however Atlanta looks on paper, however they announce it, it's going to be down to who wins the 1v1 with Ellis, who wins the 1v1 with Kyoto, who wins the 1v1 with Manotas, who wins the 1v1 with Tomas Martinez. Those are the 4 battles that Atlanta has to win 3 of them.
Ricky Ricardo says the one thing that can never be injured for Atlanta United, the feeling of finessing other MLS teams out of money and players. Hashtag WallPass Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, this is another player who, for whatever reason, Chicago is ready to give up on, and he feels like a player, in my mind, that has been more than they saw. So we'll see. And we'll see if it works out. You never know. Could just be a depth piece. Could just be a piece that, look, this is a player characteristic we don't have. Let's go grab it. Could be, more things in mind. And if he plays as an outside back, then that does open up some possibilities. ATL UTD fan number 1 has a link, and we'll retweet it from Soccer Down here, that he is told will work to buy Open Cup tickets without a Florida address. I do not recognize it. FIVO? It looks like this is specifically for Atlanta United supporters. So I haven't bought tickets through there before. If anybody has, go ahead and chime in, but we'll retweet that. And that would be specifically in the Atlanta United visiting team section.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through that website right now, and that looks like it deals in group experiences. So that's
it looks legit. It's just it's not one that I've used before. So
I haven't used
specifics
it. Let's see. All right, we talked about Prize Picks, and I guess the reminder there for that. And quickly, fix your fantasy teams. Thanks for everybody who's joined the Fantasy League this year, and thanks to the Jason Wright Agency for sponsoring the league this year. Let's see. Quickly, here's what I've got. Westberg in net. Backline. Youngverth, Miles, Emro Tarek, Kamar Lawrence. Middle, Felipe Gutierrez, Carlos Heel, Caceres, Justin Miram. Up top, a captained Joseph and Vela with a bench of Hagelin, Schaffelberg, and Benji Michel.
Don't pick any of those players. Just saying. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Tarek's the one that's frightening to me.
It was budgetary.
And so?
Like a $5 million defender.
See if there's a better one. I don't know. We'll see what happens. 4 matches tonight across the league, and Atlanta United Houston is one of them. We'll be on the air at 6:30 for the Five Stripes Countdown at 92.9 The Game, at radio.com, at the Atlanta United app, and I think it's SiriusXM FC as well. And we will have a tailgate show very, very early from the Gulch before the tailgates actually start. We'll be down there a little bit before 4 o'clock on Twitter at Soccer Down Here, so be on the lookout for that. Stoppage time starts at 2 o'clock on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page. You can chime in there. If you had some questions today that we weren't able to get to, please resend them, and we'll get into it on stoppage time. And I'll be on with Andy and Randy, the midday show, at 1:20, and I'll be hanging out for the AMA. So if you have more questions, go ahead. Send them there, too, because I'll be answering questions all day before we get ready to start the game.
All the questions.
And I don't really have many answers about what this lineup is going to look like, so we can all figure it out together. It's going to be a wild one tonight. Lots of intrigue heading into it. We'll have the full-time report for an hour following the final whistle as you're heading home. And we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock on an Overreaction Thursday to break it all down. Thanks for listening, y'all. Mucha plata.
Mucha plata.